So next up, we've got Calvin from Drunk Animal, who's going to talk about the brand impact. Please welcome Calvin.
All right, cool. First time I've looked around, it's quite a big audience. Sorry. Okay, nice to see you all. A few faces I kind of recognise. My name's Calvin Innes. I'm the creative director and CEO of DA Creative Studio, formerly known as Drunk Animal. I've been working in marketing for 20 years now, in various sort of guises. I started off as a designer, moved into concept artist, storyboard artist, worked on TV commercials, that kind of stuff. Eventually became a project lead and worked my way up to creative director. I founded DA Creative Studio about 8 years ago, basically because I'd worked for various agencies around the UK, probably 8-9 different agencies, with varying degrees of kind of happiness, I suppose. I founded DA because I wanted to do things my way. So the way I learned around marketing was, like I say, I started off in design, but the focus for the last 10 years, probably slightly longer now, has been on how emotional connections form a really big part of marketing. So it's the psychology of marketing that then leads on to everything afterwards. A really big part of this is brand honesty. So today I'm going to talk to you about how brand honesty is the key to scaling your business online. Cool. So the first thing that's worth kind of looking at is what exactly is brand honesty and why does it actually matter? So brand honesty is all about building an audience, an engaged audience that actually gives a shit, that actually cares about what you're saying. An audience that doesn't care about what you're saying, isn't going to engage, isn't going to buy into what you're doing, and it's really hard to actually sell anything to, products, services, anything. If your audience believes what you're saying, they're far more likely to engage with anything and take an action. Ultimately, you want your audience to take an action, whether it is buying a service, whether it's buying a product, it's taking the action that you want. The best brands don't sell at all, they solve problems. So by understanding your audience, by forming these relationships, you can understand what your audience's problems are, and then you can work out what actions you need to take to actually engage with them. And everything about brand honesty is about forming lasting relationships. This is exactly the same as any relationship. It starts with honesty. If you try and form a lasting relationship with a client without them trusting you, it's not going to work. If at any point the message that you're delivering across to a client, or a brand is delivering across to a client, is dishonest, is disingenuous, it's going to come out at some point. So, very simply, your customers know when you're being honest, so why bother doing anything different? Marketing has changed massively over the last 20 years. I'm going to touch on a little bit more in a minute. So when I started out in the industry, it was a very, very different landscape. Honesty and trustworthiness is a really interesting area to look at. So this is all taken from the General Social Survey that basically gives an idea of how people engage with brands. So honesty and trustworthiness are seen as two of the most important things for customers who are looking at a business, to engage with a business. Obviously, the price point, the value proposition is important, and the quality, but ranking right up there is honesty and trustworthiness, and this is becoming more and more apparent as years go on. So millennials and Gen Z are the least trusted age groups ever. This is down to a couple of different reasons. Firstly, millennials and Gen Z have been subjected to so much marketing, so much advertising that is dishonest and disingenuous over the last decade that they are naturally skeptical. The next generation, Generation Alpha, which is essentially anybody born between 2010 and 2024, are predicted to be even more kind of skeptical. So if you're looking at the early end of that, you're talking about people who are 12 now. So within the next 2 to 4 years, they're going to become a primary target of a lot of advertisers. So if advertisers are not genuinely considering how they can deliver a more honest, more engaging message to Generation Alpha, they're going to miss out in a huge way. So people are far more likely to support brands that are honest and trustworthy. So 70.6% of people said they were likely or very likely to support a brand that they considered to be honest. So genuinely any brand that isn't considering brand honesty as a part of their marketing strategy is leaving a huge, huge gap there. So this is fairly well known. Everybody in here is working in marketing, around marketing, with agencies. It's pretty obvious that people want to buy from people. This goes without saying. People don't want to buy from corporations. People don't want to buy from brands, realistically. They want to buy from people. So the key to all of this is emotional engagement. So honest brands need to be willing to show their flaws as well. Okay? So it's not just about saying how good you are, what your strengths are. It's about acknowledging your weaknesses and kind of showing those as well. Granted, this is actually quite difficult to do, okay? And it is a little bit of a minefield. So if you are pitching yourself as an amazing brand that is honest and has kind of great credentials, but you can't back it up, then you're kind of screwed, okay? If you've got skeletons that you're trying to hide and you're painting yourself as an amazing company that actually isn't, that's a very, very difficult thing to hide. The issue there isn't the marketing, the issue is what the actual brand is doing and what they're actually saying. So address that first before you start saying you're amazing. If a brand is able to poke fun at themselves, goes a long way towards engaging with an audience. Again, there's a certain sort of honesty there. Utilising your team and your personal branding. So personal branding has become really important over the last few years, more than ever. So especially for kind of SMEs, having a face, having somebody who can actually engage is way more powerful than just promoting a brand. It doesn't have to be the CEO, it doesn't have to be the managing director, it doesn't actually matter who it is. As long as the person that you're putting forward is a person and that people can actually engage with them. They're not going to turn people away. Reviews and testimonials, again, goes without saying, but this is even the bad ones as well. So we have a lot of businesses coming across to us. We work in brand positioning, content marketing, digital PR. A big amount of the work that we do is brand positioning. We have brands coming through to us that have stories that they don't necessarily want people to talk about. They have reviews that aren't particularly good, and their immediate answer is to delete them and ignore them. Massive, massive mistake. So, this is kind of an interesting one. Like I say, a lot of the work that we do is around brand positioning. Brand positioning relies on creating brand attributes, and brand attributes need to be real. Like, generally, the amount of companies that I've come across that have come through to us and sort of said, these are our brand attributes, this is who we are, and it's absolute bullshit. It's the stuff that people think they want their audience to hear. So we do all of this, but we actually do this. You will get found out. Brands will get found out very, very quickly. It's very, very easy to poke holes in anything now. You're literally a Google search away from somebody finding out whether you're telling the truth or not. So when we're working with companies to shape their brand attributes, it's about being honest. It's about working out exactly what they are, what they're saying, that they believe in it, that they can back it up. If they want to be here, and they're here, be honest about it. They're working towards getting to where they want to be, but they're not there yet, so they don't say they're there yet. So brand building is far more than just saying the right things, it's doing the right things as well. You have to be able to back this stuff up. More and more businesses are displaying their company culture publicly. This is it's kind of standard now. The behind the scenes stuff, the team photos, the any of that kind of stuff that shows how companies are working. And it works, it really does. This is about the honesty, this is about the personal connection. Where it falls down is where you're saying one thing and the content that you're putting out says exactly the opposite. Then instantly you've got distrust there, you lose that brand honesty and you lose the connection. So if you can't back up what you're saying, then literally don't say it. When I started out in marketing, say 20 years ago, marketing wasn't about lying, but it kind of was. You would do anything you could to sell. It was about selling completely. It was a very, very grey area. It isn't anymore. It isn't. Brand honesty is far, far more important. So the whole thing of this is it's not just about looking good, it's not just about sounding good. Businesses, at the end of the day, want to earn money. That's kind of how it works. So businesses want to see a return on their investment. They want to see why brand honesty actually has an impact. And it does. This stuff isn't just nice and fluffy. It has a direct impact on ROI. Honesty resonates with consumers, employees, and investors. It builds loyalty and trust. It builds these long-term relationships, which in turn has a direct impact on the company's ROI. So, a few quick stats. 63% of consumers will be more likely to buy from an authentic brand than for one that is dishonest. Okay, so this is quite an interesting one, to be honest, because this whole presentation is about brand honesty. It's about telling the truth, all that kind of stuff. The fact that 63% of consumers have said that they would be more likely to engage with an authentic brand doesn't necessarily mean that 63% of kind of people would. They think it sounds good. They think it's the right thing to say, okay? But realistically, even if 40% of consumers would be more likely to engage with a brand, it's still a fucking huge number, okay? It's still a massive amount of the audience that you have to consider that are directly influenced over whether or not you're actually being honest or not. 47% of employees place brand authenticity amongst their top requirements when they're moving to new jobs. Over the last couple of years, it's been kind of quite interesting where some of the shift has been. Focusing on flexible working, focusing on company culture, all that kind of stuff are like hugely, hugely important. But right up there is brand honesty, and company culture actually ties into this quite a lot. So if you're saying that your company, your brand is saying that their brand has this incredible company culture, and you can't back it up, then it's going to come back to bite you. 23% of investors say brand honesty influences whether or not they would financially back a brand. So all of this is kind of there's pretty clear indications that brand honesty has an actual direct impact on the kind of money that a brand can make. A couple of the other things I wanted to talk about. First off, people are emotional. They make emotional decisions, okay? And a lot of this comes back to building this brand honesty. So the key is emotional engagement. People, whether they like it or not, make emotional decisions. They just do. They then try and rationalise those decisions by applying reasons and logic and all this kind of stuff. But people are animals. People make emotional decisions. It's just how it works. You pick a car. The reasons you buy that car might be because it's got great fuel efficiency. It might be because it's safe. It might be because it's a decent price, all this kind of stuff. But there is an initial emotional connection that you then have to try and justify with these rationalizations, and that's the reason you actually buy it. Even people who you would assume are the opposite end of the spectrum, all they care about is saving the world. Okay? All they care about is cutting carbon emissions. So they want to buy a car that is cutting carbon emissions. The reason they want to save the world is an emotional connection. It all comes back to exactly the same thing. So learning to connect with people, understanding what your audience is actually looking for on an emotional level and how you can talk to them personally is really important. The only way you can make an audience listen to you is making them trust you. So a couple of the things I wanted to kind of touch on quickly. If you make a mistake, own it. It's pretty hard to hide mistakes these days. We've worked with brands who have made mistakes, who have put out the wrong messaging, who have done things not quite the right way. Their initial response, say we work in PR quite a lot, is hide it, deny it. It doesn't work, you can't. 20 years ago, maybe. It's a very, very different landscape. If you make a mistake, if a brand makes a mistake, it should own it. You should obviously try not to make those mistakes in the first place, but they do happen. People aren't perfect, brands aren't perfect. The key is the way you respond to it and making sure that that messaging afterwards is right and it's honest. So this kind of goes back a little bit to, like I say, when I first started working in marketing, I worked down in London for a long time, worked over in Manchester, and I sort of came back up here. And the marketing industry was synonymous with lying. It just was. Marketing still, for a lot of people, is seen as manipulation and lying and dishonesty. It's just trying to sell something and it's greedy. The problem is with that kind of marketing, it just doesn't work anymore. You get found out very, very quickly, and it's a hard place to come back from. So, interesting thing about lying is understanding how lying works. Lying's human nature. People lie. It's as simple as that. If you're an adult, 1 to 2 times a day, you deliberately mislead people. Now, if you think about it, this could be making your kids eat the breakfast by telling them a little white lie. This could be a reason you're late for work. This could be generally something that does a lot of good and makes somebody feel good about themselves, but it's a little white lie. These are all technically lying. It generally is human nature. Where things have kind of got muddied is where you've got things like enhancing the truth, or, like Trump said, alternative facts. This, when it's used in marketing now, is obviously massively frowned upon. Essentially, it's outlawed. It's kind of, there's lots of recent examples of businesses that have used alternative truths that have been pulled up on it more and more. Very recently, Oatly. So Oatly have built their entire brand on being honest. When they then stretch over to being ever so slightly dishonest, it comes back to bite them because they put themselves on such a huge pedestal to begin with. Plenty of examples. Brewdog's Gold Cans was fairly horrific. Reebok's Easy Tone Trainers was 30 years ago, would have been incredible. The way it landed, essentially, if anybody's not aware of it, it's essentially a pair of trainers that you wear, and as you walk, you magically lose weight. Had you said that 30 years ago, you could probably get away with it. It's very, very easy to look at now and poke holes in that, and that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. They had to take down, issue apologies. It just didn't work. Essentially, if your audience can't trust you, and they feel like they're being exploited for your own gains, you're not going to be able to build that lasting relationship. And that's all brand honesty is about, is building that lasting relationship. So there's a couple of things that kind of come into this, where people can use brand honesty to their advantage. And this is essentially what we spend a lot of our time doing, is understanding audiences. So if a brand can understand what their audience is saying and what they're already thinking, you can shape it to work really well. You can use honesty as a really solid marketing tool. So 2 very recent and very different and very, very public campaigns that essentially use brand honesty. So I'm fairly certain everybody in here has seen these before. They've won a crap ton of awards, they've been shared all over the place. On the left, obviously, KFC, one of the best pieces of copywriting, one of the best pieces of reactive marketing that utilises honesty over the last sort of few years. To acknowledge the fact they'd run out of chicken, worked really, really well. Was potentially a bad story, a bad piece of press that they turned on its head very effectively. On the right, obviously Burger King. This has run a lot of very recent awards. The Moldy Burger. So this is an interesting one. It came off a trend that started kind of being spread around in about 2014, based on McDonald's. So obviously the Burger King McDonald's rivalry is obvious. It's fairly well known. In about 2014, there started to be a lot of videos and a lot of photos shared around. The press picked up on fairly significantly, talking about how McDonald's burgers and fries didn't rot. So 3-4 years later, they looked exactly the same. The reality is, it's nothing to do with preservatives. They had the moisture and stuff cooked out from them that just didn't rot, it's fine. But the press had sort of picked up on it, and this story had stuck, and it got a huge amount of attention. So this entire campaign was created on the back of that. And it's using honesty, the fact that they don't use preservatives as a marketing tool. The reason these worked is both brands understand intrinsically their audiences. Their audiences, they know inside out, they know exactly what they're thinking, exactly what they're feeling. So creating this kind of copy, this kind of content, is much, much easier. but they both essentially come down to brand honesty. So just to kind of summarise a few bits and pieces, if you want your brand to become part of a consumer's life, the first step is to tell them who you are and actually stand by it. Don't just say what you think people want to hear. Vague brand statements are absolutely a thing of the past. Transparency and honesty is absolutely essential. It is becoming more and more essential as we go forward. When the audience is becoming less and less trusting, it's important that brand honesty is part of anybody's strategy. So just to kind of summarise everything, don't fall into the trap of thinking that your product or service is more important than your brand. Guarantee you it isn't. It just isn't. A really shit brand will struggle to sell the best product in the world. A really fucking good brand can sell shit. Simple as that. And to build a really good, trustworthy brand, it's about being honest. So choose honest brand attributes, things you can actually back up, things you actually believe in, things you live and breathe. If the things you want your brand to be, or your client's brand to be, aren't quite there yet, be honest about it. Be honest about the fact that you're working towards being carbon neutral, that you're working towards having flexibility in the workplace, whatever it might be. Don't say you're there if you're not. Show your human side. Again, human connection kind of just makes sense. People work better with humans. Build lasting relationships. There's a lot of emphasis on people building new clients, the next one, straight away, instead of having lasting, solid relationships that actually matter. So it's far more important to have, say, a client that pays you $1,000 a month over 30 years than it is to have a client that pays you $5,000 as a one-off. Provide a consistent experience. So basically being able to back up what you say. If you're saying this over here, and you're doing this over here, people will find out. People will see it very, very quickly. And it's very hard to pull back that trust. Building trust from the offset is a little bit easier. Once you've lost somebody's trust, trying to get it back is very difficult. Finally, brands should own their mistakes. More and more, it's important that brands understand that people want to see flaws. They understand flaws. Obviously not too far, but if you've made mistakes, own it, work out how to address it, show people that you're working on making things better so you don't make the same sort of mistakes again. That's it. I've been Calvin. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.